the Around the NFL podcast. Is anyone still out there? Hello?
Fair question. Welcome to another edition of the Around the NFL podcast. My name is Dan Hansis. I come to you from a city filled with heroes in bunkers. Mark Sessler, Greg Rosenthal, Ricky Hollywood. What is up, boys and girls?
Well, we're in more than one city now. Ricky, with a beautiful backdrop. If this is sent out on social at all, you know.
Can we see it?
Yeah, it's beautiful out. Sorry if my lakeside wind gets you.
Wait a minute. Are
exactly?
You? Yeah, what's happening here?
I decided to fly home this week to visit family, and I can work from anywhere, and decided to come home. And it's not too bad of a desk today, I gotta say.
It's like,
are you able to
Ricky Hollywood?
Well, by your parents, you know, they're the ones who did the work.
Yeah, I haven't done anything.
Do you have a little boat down there that you can go
I
row
do.
about?
Yes, I have a boat.
Does it have a name?
No, I didn't name it.
You can do the classic sports writer move and like take a picture and be like, "My office for the day."
No, we banned that phrase. If you recall, Greg, we banned that as a part of the lexicon, so she can't do that.
Okay.
What's the square footage over there, Ricky? I'm always trying to figure out, get an approximation of Erica's family wealth.
It's incredible. That's all you need to know. It's incredible wealth. The little that we know. I mean, it is what it is.
That's not true. That's not true. It's a nice, quaint little condo.
You know, it is a sign of like your class standing when you're asking to count other people's money. So that was a bit of a telling on myself, and Greg was happy to jump in there. Erica, we don't want to make you uncomfortable.
A couple little stories, but we don't need to make her uncomfortable. A couple little
you guys paint me in the worst light ever, and you know what? You just keep talking, and I'm gonna sit by my lake house.
You're born into it, you know.
I think it's nice that you're rich. I think it's good.
I'm not rich.
Well, you know, to some degree, whatever's happening.
Real. This is a real podcast.
I do like my whole thing is when I think about what does it mean to be New England blue blood, to be one of the, you know, the upper tier members of that society, was I bounced on the lap of Ted Williams as a child? And to that answer, Erica, you must reply,
yes.
Yeah.
Teddy ball game.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. What's going on in the news, guys?
You're right.
Nice.
We do have to get to Vic Tafur pretty soon.
I'm excited about Vic Tafur. You know, he will be the longtime beat man connected to the Raiders, and he is going to be our guest of honor when we continue our Wheel of Team series with the Raiders. And this was the first beat guy where when we make the announcement, we spin the wheel on Monday, where I don't know about your guys' replies, but I got several. They're like, you got to get Vic. Vic's got to be the guy to talk Raiders football, and that's exactly what we're going to do.
Yeah, there were a few mentions for people that I'd never heard of also, but Vic seemed to be the overwhelming favorite among a certain type of Raiders fan.
And Greg, you had like a spicy tweet out there where you were ranking the Twitter fan bases.
Oh, yeah.
And I believe you had the Raiders in the top 5, Raiders fans in the top 5 Twitter fan bases.
They've been put through a lot the last 2 decades, and it hasn't remotely dimmed their enthusiasm. B, I think I just was afraid of them if I didn't put them on. You know, like they rule through intelligence and intimidation, and you know, I'm guilty of being a victim to that.
That was a very crafty tweet to put out there in mid-June, where there's not a lot happening. It engages everyone on the list and the others who are not. I almost thought that Greg had gotten some social media counseling from someone on how to craft a killer NFL tweet.
I was super bored watching my kids scooter around this little like sort of park half pipe type of thing, and was just killing time. But yeah, the best 5 Twitter, Saints Twitter got number 1. They have the smarts, but they're so funny. I mean, they're the funniest Twitter, the most entertaining. Seahawks Twitter, number 2. And then I had Raiders, Eagles, and Falcons as the next 3. Now, so some teams came after me. The Browns fans were there, and that's true. Maybe I don't follow enough Browns fans and stuff, but I felt good about that top 5.
Okay.
Today I had to do the worst Twitters. People wanted that too. And I went with Patriots, Bills, and Bears. Those are the 3 worst.
Interesting.
Wow, please.
The Pats?
It's very annoying.
You're trash, kid. You're trash.
Every Pats fan agreed in the mentions. I consulted because it came about because Bill Barnwell then replied to me, I wonder if our bottom 5 are the same. And so we texted each other and we had the exact same bottom 3. So I was like, well, if it's that much of a consensus, we got to just put it out there.
I've never thought about this once, but I like that you guys are plugged in on this because I find it interesting.
I'm not.
Oh, look, joining Erica on the deck, it's Ben Affleck and Mike Greenwell. More New
that's
England
nice
royalty.
for them to stop over.
1987 MVP runner-up, I believe, Mike Greenwell. How about that?
All right, let's do some news.
All this family wants is justice. Oh, it's nice to see some people change their mind. The head of the NFL said, yeah, maybe we was wrong. Football players, maybe they did have the right to peacefully protest. Well, don't apologize. Give Colin Kaepernick a job back.
Well, there it is. Reverend Al Sharpton speaking at George Floyd's funeral and calling for Colin Kaepernick to get back in the NFL. Do you guys think, before we get into the news, do you guys think it's going to happen? As simple as that. It's obviously a very complicated issue, but maybe it's not so complicated. Do you think Colin Kaepernick has played his final down of football in the NFL after what's transpired over the last 2 weeks?
I mean, it's a guess, but I think so because on top of the fact that he, based on the player that he is, and he hasn't played in a long time, should already have a backup job based on some of the backups out there. When you start to, assuming, action begins and you start to lose quarterbacks left and right, if his name is ignored at that point, I would be really concerned about where the league actually really is at on this issue.
I doubt it. Because look, if the Seahawks are talking about it in the past tense, it's like that's a team that should do it. And I just think it would have to take an owner that says to their coaching staff, I'm sure they'd bring it up, in a way that they want to listen. But it probably would just take an owner saying, we're going to do this because we think it's the right thing to do for the league, and we'll figure out the contract. And if you don't want them, like, sorry, we're just going to make that decision. That's happened sometimes in NFL history. Usually it's more about like league-wide matters, but it basically, I think, would take an owner doing that, and they haven't done it so far. So I guess I don't expect it to happen now.
Fair to be cynical, I think, about that.
I think that's probably the most logical way this plays out. But I will say, that what's happened and how the kind of climate around this has shifted. And I know there's still millions of people that feel the way Drew Brees did this time last week, for instance. However, I think it's thawed in terms of how some people that maybe were either on the fence or some people that just kind of now see it differently than they did after what's played out with George Floyd and more thought and more coverage of the Kaepernick situation. I wonder if an owner will seize on that, realizing that it wouldn't be perhaps quite as polarizing as it was in the past. So I'm going to say, I'm going to say yes. I think it can happen. I think it will.
I'm with
happen,
you, and I think also a lot of it was tied to, I think owners were scared about sponsorship and dollars. I mean, obviously, that's typically what they seem to be lured to and attracted to begin with, which is the money base of it. But you're talking about a season where there's also no fans in the stands. I mean, it's a changing time, and like it to me, I consider it a pretty cynical reality if no owner at this stage would be open to it.
It is, but we haven't heard the owners say anything about Goodell's.
Nope, they've been quiet.
Video, and of
That's
course
true.
that video didn't mention Kaepernick either. And there's this whole, people bring up that there's, a case that of course the NFL already settled with Kaepernick, paying him money in terms of what the terms are of that grievance, and maybe that affects what Goodell can say. I don't really know, but we haven't heard owners on it really.
And one other part of this, which is kind of forgotten because so much has happened both in the NFL and in the world since it happened, but Steve Weish was there when it happened. The Kaepernick had a private workout or a public workout in November of last year, and that didn't go off without a hitch. That was, I remember Steve coming on our show and saying that the seeds of mistrust are so deep between Kaepernick's camp and the NFL that if you remember, Kaepernick moved the workout to a different location at the last second, and some people viewed it as maybe not a farce, but something that was like, it led to more thought that, is this guy really serious about getting in the league, or is it more about a platform and using it as a way to spread his message? And that, I imagine, is going to scare teams off as well. So we'll see what happens, but it remains one of the, or if not the biggest singular story in the NFL right now. Let's get to some other news, and we'll start. We're talking running back stuff again, and running backs that want to get paid believe they deserve to get paid. And Vikings running back Dalvin Cook, one of the very best in the league, has said that he plans to hold out without a, quote, reasonable extension. A source told ESPN he's out without a reasonable extension. He will not be showing up for camp or beyond. The Vikings had some cap issues, but they moved Stephon Diggs. That clears some money off their cap. But the decision, I guess, Greg, comes down to, do they want to invest in a running back when we keep on seeing that these investments haven't quite worked out around the league when you get into business with a superstar at that position?
Yeah, I think they'd like to pay him, but he has some of the red flags that you worry about in terms of his injury history. He also has a really good backup. I just think it's a normal time for a player to hold out. So like, look, this happens every year. It's not surprising news. The thing that's different this year that people might not be aware of is that the new collective bargaining agreement really put in some rules that makes it harder to hold out. And if you don't show up for camp, you start losing an accrued season if you just don't show up for camp. Now, I think it's going to be like up to the team. If you can figure out a contract, it doesn't really matter. You don't need that accrued season, but there are some new rules. You also can get fined much more. It's mandatory. That's if you're on a second contract, so that doesn't apply to Dalvin Cook. But that was one of those little wrinkles in this new CBA that, like, if Dalvin Cook doesn't show up, in theory, he loses that accrued season towards free agency right away if they don't come to a new contract agreement. Yeah,
it was a little bit of a undersold aspect of the new CBA because I don't really recall hearing about that until this issue popped up. And it should certainly curb some of the, some of the stuff we've seen in terms of holdouts, going deep into the season or something. If you don't think there's a hope of a contract, the Vikings have in the past signed guys like Xavier Rhodes and Diggs and Everson Griffin and Linval Joseph to contracts like the day before training camp. And Courtney Cronin from ESPN also reported that the actual asking price seems to be closer to about $13 million per year when it was originally noted it was around 16, which is way up there. So you don't know, maybe we'll see what happens with that, but maybe part of it is Cook having to have a dose of reality in terms of what he can ask per year here.
And we talked about Derrick Henry last week, another guy that wants a long-term deal with Paul Kuharski when we did our Titans deep dive. And Henry wanting superstar money is tough because he's not a true 3-down back. Well, Cook is. Cook is a guy that not only is he a stud running the ball, but last season he was targeted in that offense 63 times. He had 53 catches, averaged almost 10 yards a catch. I mean, he's kind of a do-it-all guy. But like Greg said, there's some red flags there with his injury history. And we'll see how the Vikings play this. But this is all very normal. It's almost nice to have some sense of normalcy on the leak out. Like I just on Twitter saw that Nick Underhill, who covers the Saints, does a great job. He tweeted an article that Jared Cook, a lot of talk around the Saints that Jared Cook is going to be unleashed as a monster this year. And I just put up the trope signals because it's good to have the trope alert back this time of year, which is something that's been wiped out mostly because we're not going to have any OTAs or minicamps.
Trope alert. Trope alert.
Jared Cook's 33 years old.
Alert. Well, Jared Cook is his own. He's trope like a walking trope. He gets that every team he's on. He's been on like 5 teams. We've heard this Jared Cook trope specifically.
I'm not taking the bait.
One thing
right.
with Dan, I'm not with you. Like when it comes to the coronavirus taking certain things away potentially for good, like holdout news is just not simply something that revs my engine, nor will it ever.
I want it. I want anything that feels like the way things used to be, personally, at least in the world of football. In other news, the NFL and the Players Association, this from Tom Pelissero today, are discussing the possibility of shortening the 2020 preseason. Nothing is finalized or close to being finalized, but multiple team executives informed of talks currently believe they could end up playing half of the typical preseason schedule, going from 4 games to 2. That would allow for a longer ramp-up period for a league filled with players who weren't able to get their usual offseason work in with their teams due to the restrictions brought on by COVID-19. This feels like a long time overdue. It is crazy to me that in the late 70s, as late as the late 70s, you were playing 6 preseason games before the season began. Knocked down to 4 for the last couple decades. 2 feels right because 4 feels long.
Right. And 4, this was going to, I believe, be the last year of 4 or the second to last. You know, they had negotiated it down to 3. The players had wanted 2. And so for this year, I think we are just getting that 2. And who knows, maybe it'll go in a certain way that they just say, I know we agreed to 3, in the CBA, but maybe we'll knock it down to 2. What is the point of these preseason games in terms of, making money other than the TV revenue? Because if fans aren't in the crowd anyways, that's a big part of it. Are you really going to charge your fans full price for preseason games like you have in the past, your season ticket holders this year? That seems very dicey. And I think owners would probably want to avoid that anyways. And I think the coaches and the players are probably on the same page here that they don't want to play 4 games this year, at least.
I'm with you. I think the league has 2 problems when it comes to asking fans to pay money to see anything. It's the Pro Bowl and any preseason game, because if anything, the trend last year was we're not even going to fool around with playing players for 5 or 6 plays in these games. They were just yanked entirely for almost 3 of the 4 contests for most teams. And I don't think that helped everyone, but we always look at things from this lens. But I would say if you're a coach with, 22 cornerbacks at the start of camp, and you've got to find a way to whittle it down and figure out who some of them are, it's just this is going to be a challenging process in general to figure out how to make some of those decisions. And preseason games matter for those guys. That said, the idea that human beings suffered through 6 of these at some point is crazy. But those guys were also showing up to camp, 15, 16 pounds overweight of like beer weight. And so these guys, the players, are putting themselves into a better situation out of the gate right now.
It was a totally different world. There was a time when the Jets-Giants preseason game was a bigger deal than any of their regular season games.
Well, that was like 8 years ago.
No, it was like 1959.
No,
so they literally
Snoopy Bowl. Come on.
Like when the year after the Jets won Super Bowl III, the hype and the excitement and what Joe Namath said, the meaning behind the preseason game the next year against the Giants was bigger. That the preseason game was a bigger game than the Super Bowl. It's like, I don't know. We can't even put our minds in that time frame.
Mark, the Snoopy Bowl was manufactured corporate sludge.
Well, that's fine. But a lot of the stuff that we're told to be enthused about related to the NFL could be put into a similar category.
Well,
so, don't get too precious with that.
It also gives the league, a month more to
Mark.
figure out. It gives them more time to figure out however they're going to handle these games, which is ultra complicated. And it's like the NBA is starting in late July. That's not that much before the NFL. And they've had this whole ramp up. It's not, they need to figure out how exactly this is all going to work, which is going to take some work.
Speaking of a COVID-19 world, Bruce Arians, the coach of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, appeared on Chris Long's podcast. Chris Long's a competitor. He's not somebody we cover anymore. He's a competitor. And I think he should be viewed that way.
I disagree.
Yes. I understand we want to say that he's doing all the right things on and off the field, and I totally agree, but he is a podcast host, and that should always be kept in mind as well now.
Sure, he's in that bucket, so therefore...
him and there are 15,000 podcasts out there, Green light.
15,000 enemies, Mr. Rosenthal. 15,000 enemies. Anyway, Long's podcast had Arians, and Long asked about the idea of keeping a quarterback away from the facility during the season to give the team a little bit protection in these uncertain times. Let's hear what Brucey had to say.
Yeah, that's one of the things I've been pondering in the last 2 or 3 weeks as we set the protocols. And from what I'm understanding is if you test positive, you get quarantined for 2 weeks. Now, if you have no symptoms, I don't know what that means.
Yeah.
Is it a false one? Is it? So there's so much to learn and still explore with this thing. But I've thought about keeping the third quarterback on the roster out of the room.
Mm-hmm.
Does Chris Long's podcast have like Carnival Cruise music just floating underneath the entire show?
It was enjoyable to listen to.
Yeah, you got to set yourself apart. He's actually got a live band just playing in the background while he's interviewing.
I'm certainly feeling better about it all of a sudden. There's a lot of logic to Bruce's thoughts there.
Yeah, I think there is. But, whenever you hear a backup quarterback talk about anything, all they ever talk about is, my preparation. I'm prepared to step on the field the minute, anything goes awry. And if you're quarterback number 3 and you're home on your couch or out in your backyard lying in the grass while everyone else is gaining knowledge and, working together and getting reps, it feels like a bit of a bum deal for that individual.
I think it's the perfect role, though, for Mike Glennon, to get back into the league. Just, it's kind of an embarrassing roster spot to be the quarantined quarterback. That's like let's get Peterman back.
Do you get paid the same amount?
Of course, visible. Yeah. It wouldn't be a bad job.
Who's the joke really on ultimately?
Right. I don't think this. I'd be surprised if this happens, but it's not a crazy thought when you're just thinking about things because it's all going to be messy. We'll see. Like 5 players on the Alabama team reportedly tested positive, and they're in the spring. But if that happens with an NFL team, I don't know. We're in uncharted territory, but it's messy.
I love the optimism of this full steam ahead. Everything is going to go off without a hitch, but human nature and the way that viruses tend to work, and they're not as concerned about television ratings and attendance and all the other stuff as human beings are, especially owners. Tricky territory. I think at least Bruce Arians what he's telling you is coaches are going to have to be more flexible to the tradition of building and running a team than ever before, times 10,000.
There is pro sports being played now. It's soccer. It's not as many people. There will be pro sports, played by the NBA, before the NFL comes back. So it's going to be done. Korean baseball has been being played without any major. So they're going to have a million precautions, but it is being done. It's just there's no other sport with as many people.
Well, as many people smashing into each other also, but
that's fair.
In other news, we're talking about off-season programs in this unprecedented time we're living in. The Bears, they've decided to end their off-season program earlier, and Matt Nagy said, you know what, 9 weeks, that's fine. That's enough. And he wants his players to focus on training without having to worry about video conferences 4 days a week. The team will hold its final virtual meeting on Thursday. So they're basically finishing a week and a half ahead of schedule. We've done so much. We feel like we're in a really good place right now, Nagy said on a Tuesday conference call. Yeesh, Mark. Yeesh.
Yeah, I think I wouldn't tell anyone. I'd say to the players, guys, you've met all our goals. But I wouldn't announce to 31 other teams we're closing up shop. Because what do we think of the Lions for rolling into camp? What is it, a week later that they do every year? And how have the Lions fared with that plan? So a lot of pressure suddenly on the Bears.
Well, the
Greg
Saints
will disagree.
I'm just saying, didn't the Saints say they were canceling the whole offseason program?
Well, that's because they play an extra 2 or 3 weeks than every other team. So,
and I think a lot of I have found it interesting. It's a little related to this. Is the NFL allowed coaches to come back, and now they're unveiling when players can go back, and more teams than not have just been like, nah, it's okay. Even the Patriots are we don't really have any big need to come back in. They're allowed to. The Rams are the same way. They're allowed to, but a lot of teams, most teams are saying Like this is fine. Well, let's gear up for training camp. That is our huge goal. Is if that can somehow come off,
you can do.
Right? Like that if that can come off, great. But otherwise, like we'll see you then.
There's going to be, in a best case scenario, I guess is the way this is going to play out. And I totally understand. If you want to look at it as like, oh, maybe they shouldn't be so rosy and optimistic about how they want the schedule to go. But if it works out how the NFL wants it to work out, you're going to lose OTAs and you're going to lose the mini camps and I guess 2 preseason games. But other than that, they want things to be on schedule. But if you take away the OTAs and mini camps, like what more are you able to do right now? Your hands are kind of tied in, right?
Right.
Ultimately. Right. In other news, Panthers news, Luke Kuechly retired. Remember that? How about that? I forgot about that. One of the best linebackers in the league. Surprisingly, shut it down in January at 29 years old. Well, he's staying with the organization where he became a star. Announced on Thursday he's returning. This is last Thursday, returning to the team as a pro scout. And here's Kuechly's quote: "My family ran an auto parts company. That was my last job when I was in high school. I worked in the warehouse as a warehouse picker. Well, now he's doing some real grunt work as a scout." Mark, you got to respect this as an everyman.
I think it's pretty cool. I mean, I wonder what the catch up for someone like him is on that front. It's those jobs they're not cushy. You're on. I don't know what exactly his specific role is, but some of those guys are on the road a ton. But I think he's obviously more dealing with the pro side. They'd be like, what kind of linebacker are we looking for? You basically, someone with your skills. Can we just find you again? I don't know.
Yeah, he said he says his favorite thing is to be around the team, to be around football, and this was his way to do that. I think he is mostly working out of Carolina in terms of working like with their pro scouting department. You hear people say it's not about the money. Well, this is clear. Like he's not about the money. He had a broadcasting career offer. He could do other things. It is pretty cool. And you've seen some players, Ozzie Newsome was almost a Hall of Fame type of player. I mean, he was a Hall of Fame.
Started the same way under Belichick.
It happens sometimes. Doug Williams obviously has had a great career from personnel.
In other Panthers news, the team announced today that they are moving the statue of former owner Jerry Richardson. Quote, "In the interest of public safety, the 13-foot statue," which is just an absurd sculpture. It is because it's not going to be melted down or anything. It's just being moved, but it's a giant statue of Richardson holding a football with 2 ferocious Panthers pouncing on each side of him. It's resided outside of the Bank of America Stadium. It was given to Richardson on his 80th birthday in 2016. However, the founding owner of the franchise abruptly put the team up for sale after allegations of racial and sexual misconduct in the workplace were made against him in December 2017. David Tepper ended up coming in and buying the team. And here's the full quote from the team: "We are aware of the most recent conversations surrounding the Jerry Richardson statue and are concerned there may be attempts to take it down. We are moving the statue in the interest of public safety." A little lukewarm on the statement there from the Panthers. Greg.
Well, I'm not, because actions to me speak louder than words. And in this case, I think these actions are going to be appreciated by a lot of people in Carolina. And Jonathan Jones, who we know.
You could do both, I guess is what I'm saying. I guess you can do both.
But here's what I was going to get to. Jonathan Jones, reported, and he's followed it up today, that, when the sale happened and people knew this, Tepper, the new owner, had to agree to keep that statue, or else he wasn't going to sell the team.
Stipulated.
And the only reason legally that they could say that they could remove it was for safety reasons. That was written into the contract. And so they're going with that. And Richardson has some sort of representative that didn't release a statement from Richardson, but did respond, a spokesman, and basically just said he's always treated everyone fairly, but he's probably not thrilled about this. So I reading between the lines, I think it's the way Tepper was going to get this accomplished.
Interesting.
It's crazy. It's crazy. It's crazy.
I know. It's wild. Things are changing. The Big Ben, speaking of things are changing, the Big Ben block party is coming to an end. We were just talking about this somewhat recently, that Ben Roethlisberger, his Twitter account blocks everybody, including, I know, myself, Greg, I believe you. Mark, you were not blocked, which you took issue with on some level.
I feel like I've been more critical of Big Ben than everyone here put together for various reasons, and I've not been blocked by the guy, so I don't understand the strategy.
All right. Anyway, it was, and this is your old boss there, Mike Florio, Greg. Just another example. This guy he's going to crank out the content no matter what, and he has a whole story about it on Pro Football Talk. That at _Big Ben 7 is going to unblock all the people that have been blocked, according to a source with knowledge of the situation. So, Greg, we're off the hook. We're unblocked.
Oh my God, what a day. I mean, you get rid of this Richardson statue. That's great. You get unblocked. It would be funny. I'd like to read this article. I feel like Big Ben was trying to pin it to like the latest, well, as the nation is coming together, I decided to try to heal things as way I could by unblocking everyone.
I want to know, Greg, and I know you have a cordial relationship with Florio post PFT. I want to know if Mike did digging on this and reached out to the Big Ben camp, or the Big Ben camp reached out to Florio, a prominent newsmaker, an aggregator here for the NFL, and who got this story out here? Who was amplifying here? Like, who was the one that wanted to make this something in the mainstream?
Feels like Florio, he's always trying to scare up some stories. He's also very tight with he covers the Steelers. That's like the closest team to him. So I bet he was probably annoyed for a long time. He was blocked or something.
I got to believe there's a little bit of Big Ben in there. I mean, wanting, it's the Big Ben image. It's a little bit petty. We've had issues with quarterbacks blocking us before on our show and dealt with it head on with someone we'll talk about later today. But let's be honest. I mean, it looks a little bit small for Big Ben to be blocking anyone that comes at him with any sort of a take that's anti-Steelers-ish, please.
It is funny to think of like the Roethlisberger, the guy who runs his Twitter account, like contacting Florio. Hey, can you get this out there?
That's what I mean. I want to know. I want the oral history of that PFT post.
I'm cordial enough, as you said. We get along. I'm going to text Mike about it. See what happens.
And Mark, don't think
let us know right away, please.
Don't think I didn't notice that, Mark. Small Ben, more like Small Ben. Am I right?
Well, you can go with that variation. He's been. Certain Browns fans would like to call him Big Jen at times. I don't think that's in vogue at the moment, but that had some run for a bit.
Finally in the news. Look, it's finally happening. And I'm actually, you would think I'd be excited about this. And I know a lot of people on Twitter reached out to me about it, but I'm bummed. I'm borderline angry about it. There is an app that's being used over the pond for top level soccer teams where the team builders are in contact via an app. It's a site that lets clubs see which players are available and to gather information by direct message without and this is from The Guardian, I'll use their language here, without the often torturous and expensive process of going through agents and intermediaries. And this all went down last Thursday. Executives from 250 clubs across 5 continents were immersed in the world of online speed dating. Every 10 minutes, a fresh encounter would start. Small talk would be made and understanding would be reached, perhaps even a deal struck. Then a button would be pressed and the whole process would start again. All the business conducted without an agent in sight. 13 Premier League clubs were involved in this, including Arsenal, Everton, Brighton. And it's a 10-minute slot where all the team builders get in contact with each other and they say, hey, this is who we're shopping. Here's who's available. This is what we might want from you. And it seems just way more effective than the process that goes on here in the North American sports landscape. What's holding us back here at this point?
Well, so why are you disappointed?
I'm disappointed because the IP is out there now, and there's no way to make money off it. And Wes and I kind of cooked it up as a joint venture, but I would have eventually taken Wes to court to try to take all the money. All that now is out the door. And it goes back to, I remember I was at Hearst Castle with my wife before we got married. Hearst Castle is a beautiful estate up the coast here in Central California. And we were looking at all the beautiful flowers on the estate. And sure enough, I look at one of the flowers and be like, wouldn't it be cool to find out if there was a way to take a photo of the flower on an app and then upload it and know what the flower was. And I even had an idea for it. It was called Flower Power, an app. Everyone laughed at me. And now, sure enough, there's a huge app out there that does exactly that. This is happening to me again. Chance to be a multimillionaire being just washed away.
I'm
Everyone
reminded
of Flower Power.
Well, but I am reminded of and I hope I'm not misquoting it, but to paraphrase, the Mark Zuckerberg character from The Social Network, like if you would have invented Facebook, you would have invented Facebook. You know what I mean? When the Winklevosses are ultimately, if you wanted to do it, like, then it would have happened. You would have invented it. No,
I know.
I invented it. I'm Mark.
Well, Dan, I'll give you a few more points for the.
I know. That's why I'm
the
mad.
Flower app that circulated in the mind there. I think that's a nice thing that you came up with. I had a friend and we came up with something called doubles, where instead of this ridiculous, this was a long time ago, pre any dating apps, but instead of like some guy trying to find some girl online, like two guys that are friends go on a date with two girls that are friends, and you just see what happens. Doubles.
Well, that would have made a lot of money. They have like Reddit boards for people like that.
Well, that's what I'm talking.
Swingers,
I came up with this idea in like 2003, so it was not on a Reddit board.
So,
at that point.
I just mean like couples.
Well, I know what you mean, Greg, but this was a more it would have been a G-rated first time to hang out, and then you just see what happens from there. It makes sense.
I would love to see like an entire, like that back house you have at your house, Mark, that we talk about all the time, just filled with notebooks on this idea and all ideas pertaining to couples getting together in privacy.
Seems like it's a recipe for some friendships to really be tested.
That's true. I mean, you could go
Erica,
on up to Hearst Castle, maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, this can't be the first. This is not the first Mark Sessler idea that's popped to his mind about couples disappearing into the darkness.
No, you're right. There's got to be notebooks after notebooks after.
No, but they're not. No, hold on, guys. They're not couples yet.
I know you. You put your research in. You really need to know.
No. All right. Goodbye.
Anyway, the GM app, I know now it's not IP for me, and I'm not going to make money off it, but it just makes sense. They're doing it over there in the other version of football. So bring it over here, and you're not going to have heartbroken fan bases like in Houston, wondering how we got David Johnson in the second-round pick for one of the best wide receivers in the world. Let's do this right and eliminate the middleman with the GM app. That's what's happening in the news.
At the facility, it's felt like every other play was a pass from Carr to Waller. He loves this new target he has. Handoff here to Jacobs. Slips out of a tackle, and the rookie's taken off. Down the middle, wide open. It's Waller to the 10, and tripped up at the 2 by Will Redmond. Jacobs is going to score. Touchdown, Oakland. 3rd and 3. Carr's hit his last 8 passes. It comes out quickly, and diving for the end zone, and the touchdown is the rookie, Foster Moreau.
Up next in the Wheel of Team series, the Las Vegas Raiders, coming off a playoff-free season, 7-9, 3rd place in the AFC West. Head coach John Gruden entering his 3rd year and joining us. Like we said, by popular demand, he writes for The Athletic and he's covered this team for a long time. Vic Tafur, welcome to the Around the NFL podcast.
Doing good, guys. How you guys doing?
Good.
We're doing well. Hey, Vic, so let's start here. So the narrative around the Raiders right now is that the Gruden-Mayock team, they see that they have this superpower Chiefs in their division, and they know they're going to have to try to keep up and score points. Their draft is focused on some level toward that goal of getting this offense more explosive. My question to you to get us started, do you actually think, I know the Raiders think they have, but do you think they have narrowed the gap here between the top of this division and they're a team that's better and has a real chance of hanging around in the AFC West in 2020?
I think they definitely improved. I mean, obviously the Chiefs have a very high bar, and the Chiefs are the best team in the league, probably getting better. So I think it's a tough one to just stay with them on the scoreboard. But I think Ruggs ideally is a guy that can help spread the field, open things up for other guys like Darren Waller. Josh Jacobs had a big rookie year last year. So there's definitely some pieces there where their offense can take the next step next year.
Yeah, I look at the receiver group and I think about how they traded for Zay Jones last year because he didn't have anyone, and he just like immediately started playing starter snaps. And then you look at the receiver group this year with Tyrell Williams and Renfro and Ruggs and pretty good. And Zay Jones might not even make the team. So the personnel has been upgraded. I'm curious, just from having watched Gruden so closely, and you're familiar with his time, before in Oakland. How do you think he's been in terms of like upgrading how he likes to run offense for 2019? Because when they were good last year, it still kind of looked like the old Gruden, tons of short passes, controlling the ball. It was a little more old school. Like, how has he meshed with this new NFL?
It's a good question, because a lot of times the knock on Derek Carr is he's Mr. Check Down, always checks the ball down, dumps off the short passes. But that's what John wants. I mean, really, that's the big part of his offense. He doesn't want taking chances down the field. So a lot of times Derek's doing what he's told to do in that offense. So I think obviously last year was hard because I think John was going to evolve a little bit. I think he definitely planned to have most of his offense kind of centered around Antonio Brown. They had the whole pretty much, he was going to set every record, I think, last year in the book as far as receptions and yards. I mean, he was going to get the ball that often. So I think having that thing all fall apart so closer to the season was hard to overcome for them. I think they definitely did a nice job. They used 3 tight ends a lot, kind of try to use what they had. But 3 tight ends, teams are going to catch on pretty quick. That's not going to really help you get a lot of points in the long haul. So I think, Tyrell Williams got hurt last year at 2 bad feet. So I think last year, I do give John and Derek a little bit of excuse because I think that's valid. I think they lost 2 big pieces at receiver they were counting on last year.
Yeah, I look at Mike Mayock also in terms of the overall process of team building, that he's pretty quickly added depth in a lot of different areas to a team that definitely needed a lot of depth. I mean, their roster a couple years ago was a horror show. I look at someone like Lynn Bowden, and I know there was the issue with him this morning that maybe is not an issue. But a fascinating player at Kentucky, and I know they've got a pretty stacked backfield. But could you, to Greg's question, and Gruden, growing and becoming maybe more, innovative and 2020ish, how do you think Lynn Bowden, and maybe not right away, but as a rookie and down the road, will be used by this team? Because it's almost like a question of how do you designate him as a player?
Well, I think this year the plan is kind of use him as a running back primarily, kind of ease him in a little bit, just kind of and get some receptions, kind of maybe a couple Wildcat packages. But I think they're going to bring him along slowly. Eventually, I think the long-term goal is he can play the slot, he can move around, might return kicks also this year. So I think it will be a good test for John and Greg Olson, the OC, just how they can get him involved, kind of exploit what he can do. He's definitely a big, make you miss kind of guy. So was a rare, his stats in the SEC last year are pretty incredible for a pretty bad Kentucky team. They threw him at a quarterback, and he kind of still put up huge numbers last year. So I think he really is a rare talent. I think if he had a pro day this year, he was a little hurt. He might have gone higher in the draft. So I think it was a good value. I think he definitely is one of those guys who can definitely make plays with all over the field.
What are you expecting from Clelin Ferrell this year? He went 4th overall. It was Mayock's, first big draft pick, and didn't see much in way of production. Max Crosby, who was a later pick, he had 10 sacks and he flashed and looks like a guy who could be a long-term answer for them. Do you think that Ferrell, did he come off a guy that was developing, just albeit a little bit slower, or a potential question mark whether this was the right guy to bring into the building?
I think maybe both. I think with him, you look at last year and where he was in the draft, might be a little high, but he's not really that quick twitch kind of guy you want as an edge pass rusher. He's more of a bigger kind of physical guy. I think he's worked hard this offseason. I did a story on him recently where he spent 18 weeks in Florida in Miami. He's put on 12 pounds. He's 275 now. So I think the plan is have him as a sturdy end. He can move inside maybe on third downs, but he's definitely a hard worker. Everyone says, the character thing is through the roof. That's why they fell in love with him last year. The plan last year was to kind of ideally trade back and get him later in the first round. And then when they couldn't trade back, they're kind of stuck. They're like, well, now what do we do? I mean, we love this guy. I mean, 4 may not be the best value for him, but we do love him. So they went ahead and took him there. So I think, was he overdrafted? Yeah, possibly, but I think there's still a lot of work to work with there. I think definitely is a lot more to Clelin Ferrell than we saw last year.
Yeah, Mayock avoided.
I bet that happens all the time, right? That where teams, they fall in love with a guy, they can't move out, but it puts you in that spot, and then you get killed for overdrafting the guy. But ultimately, if he's a guy you like, you grab him.
Yeah, if it works out, if the guy becomes a great player, no one cares. You reach for him. If he had a big year last year, nobody would care about that. He went a little higher than they thought. And it's good for him. You mentioned Max Crosby. They're good friends, and Max obviously overachieved, or definitely was better than people thought he was at draft time. So they kind of balanced each other out, where Max kind of was a player they thought Klee might be. And so I think that helped Klee a lot as far as didn't get totally killed in the media in terms of his not so productive rookie year. I think Max definitely helped him out as far as taking some of the shine away and not putting so much of the light on Klee's, not totally productive rookie season.
Well, and Crosby took the heat off of Mayock too, because like with Trayvon Mullen and Josh Jacobs and Renfroe was solid. It's like Cleveland Farrell might not have been one of the best 4 rookies on his own team. I'm curious. I want to switch gears a little bit and just like ask you a little bit what it's like covering this team, especially how they're moving to Vegas. It's just a team with a lot of drama from the top on down, from ownership to coaches over the years. I guess, I've seen you've had some drama on Twitter over the years. You're not afraid to get a little back and forth. Like, what is
Vic
the
mixes
level?
It up.
Yeah, Vic is mixing.
That was the old me. I've grown up. I've matured. That's not me anymore.
Have the Raiders matured then, I guess? Like, as they're moving to Vegas, like, is this still kind of like a crazy team out of left field, or what's going on?
They're always going to be crazy. I think going back to Al Davis and now Mark, and I think you mentioned Gruden's definitely just an emotional person who kind of does what he thinks at the moment. I think you look at the Khalil Mack trade. There's a lot of things that there's not a history of really a lot of planning and rational thought. It's kind of they really act. They always have kind of just kind of shot first and then ask questions later. So I think it always will be crazy. I'm sure Vegas will escalate to another notch. I think just the whole atmosphere there, and I'm dying to know what the plan is as far as security and like players. They're going to have like a roving patrol of security guys, and when they make sure they don't go to the one bad night in the high rollers room at Caesar's Palace, you're going to get $1 million. So I just think there's women that are going to be targeted. Vegas is a whole different. People say there's gambling and Wimbledon all over the country, but it's not like Vegas. You can't get in trouble at 4 a.m. on a Wednesday.
Are you moving there?
That was the plan. I'll be there next month. I think the pandemic kind of has definitely changed some things up a little bit. But I'll be there starting next month, and so it's gonna be crazy. Obviously,
how are you gonna stay out of the high rollers room?
I've been to Vegas. I lived there when I was a young man, so I've learned all those lessons. So now I'm a wise veteran. I know to watch myself, but yeah, it'll be fun. I mean, I think talking to Incognito, who definitely had his share of trouble. He said if he was going to Vegas at 25, it'd be a big problem. But now he says he's learned, and he'll be helping teammates kind of like take the calmer road. And Richie's the voice of reason. You gotta love that. But
so just sign older players, basically.
Right. You got.
I was going to say problematically.
25-years
older players.
The average age of the team is probably exactly 25, so maybe a problem.
Yeah, I think the last 2 years in the draft, definitely Mayock and Gruden, especially Mayock, to talk to these guys, and they're drafting guys who they thought ahead, like, can this guy handle it in Vegas? Can this guy handle all the temptations? And so they've definitely, maybe that's one reason they've gone towards the bigger programs. Most of their picks are guys from the bigger Clemson. They have a huge, pipeline from Clemson now. So they've tried to really think ahead and draft guys who they think will be able to handle the whole Las Vegas atmosphere.
I would say this too. The league gave them 4 primetime games in Vegas. It's pretty rare for that to happen to any team. So the expectations are there. Some of those games happen early. And I kind of, with teams like this, because I think, the consensus seems to be that the Raiders are at least an 8-8 team, if not a playoff team, potentially with a 7th wild card or 7th playoff team added. I wonder who the scapegoat would be if things went wrong, because it's not Gruden. He's under contract till the end of days. Mayock's done a good job. I look at someone like Paul Gunther, and they brought in Rod Marinelli, which is an interesting guy to bring in on defense. And if the defense, which is I think where some of the question marks lie, crumbles early, could you see him being shotgunned out of town mid-season?
I think it's possible. When you were talking about that list of possible scapegoats and who wouldn't be the guy, I thought you were going to say Derek Carr. To me, Derek Carr is the guy on the line this year.
Feels presumed at this point, too.
Yeah, you're right. It's probably obvious. But yeah, I think Gunther definitely has to have better results this year. They've drafted more players. They signed 2 linebackers. I've been here 10 years covering this team, and they've had some bad linebackers. They've never really addressed it like they have this offseason. They got Kuechly and Littleton, 2 guys who are very athletic and make some plays all over the field. So it's kind of going to be exciting for Raider fans to actually see some quality linebacker play out of this team. So I think that's a big step for Gunther. And you mentioned the draft class. They've got Arnett in the first round. So I hope he can be an impact corner. So talent's definitely there for improvement. And if there's not improvement, then yeah, speculation about Paul Guenther's future is definitely fair.
If they were 2-4 and Carr was playing not great, do you think we see Marcus Mariota?
Yeah, I don't want to play this game, but yeah, I think.
Or just what are your thoughts on how they view Mariota?
Vic don't play games, Greg.
They gave him $7.5 million to Marcus for a reason, so they didn't bring him along just to like carry a clipboard and smile and do Hawaiian, commercials from. So I just think, I think Derek obviously there's some pressure there. I think they've added the tools you mentioned on the draft class and the guys they signed. So I think that bye week is interesting. You mentioned if they have a slow start, I think there could be possible change. So I think definitely there's some urgency for the offense and for Derek Carr.
I don't know, man. I think about now that you kind of put it in my head. You're moving to a new market. You feel like you're going to gain fans in the desert. You feel like you're going to get some fans from California. But if you could lock down the Pacific Islander fan base, I know there's actually been to Hawaii for my honeymoon. I remember talking to people. Seahawks are very popular in Hawaii. If you could steal away that fan base, nice job. Maybe there's more to this with Mariota.
There's a huge Hawaiian population in Vegas. I did a story on that when they signed him. Apparently, all the people who work in hotels and those places in Hawaii, it's expensive. So they come to Vegas and they work in customer service, and hotel service in Vegas, can live a lot cheaper lifestyle. So definitely, is a huge Hawaiian population in Las Vegas.
All right, is this Mayock Gruden thing working? Yes or no?
Yeah, I think. Antonio Brown definitely tested it. Definitely there were some problems last year with the whole. All that stuff. That was a crazy month, but right now they're good. I think they've worked well together in draft. Mike does all the homework and kind of makes his recommendations. John has final say, but for the most part, I think it's gone pretty smoothly. I think besides that one major hiccup last year.
Is that the craziest thing in your beat years covering the Raiders? The whole Brown drama.
It's funny because there's been a lot, but yeah, I think it is. I think getting up every day for a month at 6 a.m, checking my Instagram, seeing what the guy did, today.
What are some other fun highlights over the years covering the Raiders?
I should make a list. There was Rolando McClain. That was a fun experience. That whole, Hugh Jackson was always full of surprises. It's been. Tom Cable had his incidents in the past.
Cable, that's up there.
That press conference where Al Davis hired Hugh Jackson and kind of just had a slideshow, of a lot of Tom Cable's transgressions, and that was something. There's so much stuff. I can't even. Dennis Allen. It was just so many. Just the whole.
People should find that press conference on YouTube. It's one of the most amazing things I've ever seen covering the NFL. You can't really put words to it unless you watch it.
No, and I'm sitting there and I'm watching it and I'm like, I can't believe what I'm watching. I look over at Hugh Jackson's family and they're like, oh, this is not what we thought this was. We thought this was, going to be the Hugh Jackson show. And they had to sit through an hour of
it was like 45 minutes of just going through Tom Cable's transgressions.
Yeah.
Little did he know how much better that head coaching stint would be than the next one.
Yeah, it was. They have a lot of coaches over the years, so there's been so much. Terrell Pryor had some incidents. It was just so much stuff I've covered. So I think, but definitely Antonio Brown, just the the expectations coming in, and the way the weirdness of the whole thing, and then what really made it just the ultimate was that when the 5 times he practiced, the 5 times I watched him practice. The guy is incredible, man. I get why you sign him, because you watch him in practice and he just dominates. You're like, oh, they're going to win 10 games this year. You can't cover that guy. It's amazing how much he's tortured his career where he can't get a job, but he's definitely still a top 5 receiver in the NFL, which is kind of, it's really sad. But when you watch him in practice, you get, oh, that's why John's doing this. That's why John is willing to take these risks and mix it up, because he's going to catch 110 passes this year if he plays. So. It was just a weird, never-ending saga for about a month and a half. Yeah,
I haven't thought about Rolando McClain in a long time, but Mark and I started at NFL.com right around the time of that bizarre arrest in Alabama, where there was the photo of him going into the cop car with a giant smile. You remember that, Mark? And I remember there was a question about whether to use that photo as the spotlight image for the article, and I believe the decision was to not use it. But wow, Raiders history, sometimes sordid.
His last few weeks on the team were spent as a practice squad fullback. That was Dennis Allen's way to kind of throw it back in his face a little bit. So yeah,
says it all.
Yeah, says it all.
All right, Vic. We really appreciate you coming on and giving us more perspective on the Raiders. And you can follow Vic at Vic Tafur, VicTafur, and The Athletic, which covers the NFL just as about as good as any site out there. So it's well worth the subscription. Vic, thank you, and good luck in your move to Vegas.
Yeah, man. Thanks a lot, guys. Nice talking to you.
Thanks, Vic.
All right,
there he goes. The great Vic Tafur. Greg, your ongoing series where I name it incorrectly. I call it roster reset, but it's actually projected starters series.
This is an ongoing series. I mean, the series ended like a month ago, by the way. It lasted 2 weeks. I think it ended a month ago.
But for the purposes of this exercise where we study each team, is there anything when you I'm trying to give you pop, Greg. Is there anything from your work you did on that didn't come up just now that you'd like to share looking at this roster?
Well, it was. I even mentioned it on the show that it's the
Giving
team.
You pop, baby.
I think I appreciate it, and it is evergreen throughout the offseason, I believe. It's the team I think I liked more after doing this exercise than any other team. I have questions about Derek Carr, and we talked about Carr a lot on the last show, but man, the offensive
Tafur was about to put you in a headlock for asking that question.
I would not win that one. I've seen Vic. I don't really know him, but he's a large man. He looks like he has played before. They have a great offensive line. I love the linebackers who he mentioned. The defensive line is maybe shaky, but it's deeper. I think Mayock's done a great job. I mean, the rookies were great. The receiver depth is great. They've got like 3 different running backs they can use in different ways. They're deep at tight end. You know, Moreau was a good rookie tight end last year too. I think Gruden coached pretty well with what he had last year. So I think the defense just needs to be average. And I don't think it's crazy for Raiders fans to have playoff expectations. Usually I think their hopes are too high. But this year, I think that's fair. I think they should think that this can be a 9 or 10 win team. Might not work out, but I think they have the tools to do it.
I'll set the over under. You're feeling optimistic. I'll set the over under at 9.5.
Well, see, that's so high.
Win.
If you gave me 8.5, I was gonna go for it. Then I'm going under.
Okay, Mark.
Yeah, I think 9 and 7 should be expected.
Couple unders over here.
Well, but that's not
under
the real
doesn't
one.
mean bad season.
They're at like
7.5.
They're at 7.5 or 8, I think, nationally. So I do like them.
My number was not based on that. It was based on your glowing report from the projected starter series on NFL.com.
Well, I understand that. That there's different ways to value things. I'm saying I think they might be in my top 7 playoff teams. When I make the predictions, I think they might get that 7 spot.
And I think it's interesting, Mark, you said that they're kind of expected to go 9 and 7. It's been a while since they were in that territory even.
Well, I mean, last year they collapsed at the end of a couple games they should have had. I could point to the game I was at against the Jaguars. They had no business losing that game. And so I think as the talent level increases, there's a lot of pressure on Gruden, and you paid Gruden money to be a top 5 coach. I see no evidence of that right now. But he's been that in the past. So I think it was a good question by Greg to ask about Gruden adapting and really being everything you could ask of a 2020 head coach. I thought he did a good job last year. And I would not be surprised at all to see them. And we can kill Derek Carr. And he's not the guy I would want to start a team with. But if you put a good roster around Derek Carr, I have no problem with Derek Carr helping them to 9, maybe 10 wins.
See, I think Gruden's doing a great job. I mean, I think that if we're talking, because I'm with the same boat as you guys, I see them as a team that's going to hang around in the playoff picture. They're not at the level of the Chiefs, but this could definitely be a team that wins 9, maybe 10 games if things go right. And if you told me that's where they'd be in year 3,
right,
after a total roster teardown,
minus Antonio Brown.
Minus Antonio Brown, but you get dinged for bringing him in the first place too. But like, Gruden's ability to be presiding over this, I think there were a lot of questions when he got hired, remembered on the show, whether he was out of the game too long, just to assume to give him that many years and that much money was a boondoggle potentially. I think everything's going great with the Raiders. This is obviously a key year in terms of progress checking. But Mark, give me one more I'll throw one more thing out there. Marcus Mariota, does he make any starts this year not tied to injuries to Derek Carr?
Well, I think it's very possible when you, again, to point to the money they paid him. And
does he make them? Yes or no?
Yes, I think he'll make. I think he could make 2.
So Derek Carr gets benched, you're saying?
I think that could happen at the end of the year too, and that could have big ramifications in the offseason.
I think that Vic made a great point of how much they paid Mariota. He is the highest paid backup in the league by, I think, a decent amount. But
nice job by his agent.
Yeah, but it shows they wanted him, and he had a market. Other teams kind of wanted him to it as a potential backup. I think he's in that spot where if you fall 2 games under 500, at that point you're in worry zone. If they play like we said and they start out quickly and they're above 500 the whole season, then they don't have to worry about it. And all that talk about Cable, not by the way to get off track. I forgot Tom Cable's back there. And, after the allegations of what he did last time he was with the Raiders. And you know what? He's been a punching bag, no pun intended, by me over the years. Their offensive line did great last year. And actually, I think it looks really good on paper. So that's a strength for them.
Hey, and speaking of problematic, spinning away now from the Raiders, good talk, guys, and we'll do another team next week. Since we're talking about the Raiders and problematic wide receivers like Antonio Brown and the move to Vegas, Chad Johnson. This was actually put on my radar by one of our listeners, Lalanas in Pajamas. Nice job by you, buddy, with a thought-provoking handle as well. But Chad Johnson, the former Ochocinco on Twitter, he threw out some props. He laid down some future bets on the NFL. Just before we say goodbye, I just want to see where you guys come down.
Wow.
Is Ochocinco going to, since we're in the realm of Vegas, we're in the desert right now, how's Ochocinco going to do? I'll go back and forth between you guys. Actually, Ricky, get in here. I want you in on this too, from the palatial Godfather estate, Don Corleone's manor.
It's officially an estate. It has boats and tennis courts. Give me a break.
That sets a very
Greg,
bad.
come on.
Sorry.
That makes it look like I haven't worked my.
You're a hard worker. No one's ever.
Well, it gives that connotation when you.
Some people who grow up, it's what you do with what you got. Some people do it and they sit on their hands. Some people they work hard. You're working hard.
Greg is going to mansplain the earth to you while we're at it. So just sit back and listen.
Just try to backtrack here.
All right, here are some props, Ricky. I'll start with you, Erica Tamposi. 20K put down on the Broncos under 7.5 wins.
Whoa, he's put Ocho. Wow,
that's just the start.
That's crazy.
You taking the under or the over? 7.5 wins.
I'm taking under.
All right.
Well, so
he has 25.
Yeah, but like 20K. That's crazy. That's pocket change,
Mark,
baby.
Mark, 20. That's tennis court maintenance money. Mark, 25K on the Packers over 9 wins.
Oh,
got to win 10.
Yeah, I'd take it over.
25 large. Greg,
here's his biggest bet. I love that.
Here's his biggest bet, Greg. 41K on the Jaguars under 5 victories.
Oh, I hate that. I hate
4 and 12 or worse.
No, I hate that. I mean, it is just not that hard to win 6 games. And I think people are a little too down on the Jaguars. There's some teams out there that are worse.
Under 5 wins. So they have to win 4 or less.
Oh, with Gardner Minshew at quarterback. Give me a break.
I hate that one.
Our guy.
Hate that one.
All right, 11K, Ricky, on the Steelers over 9 wins.
Yeah, I think they could do that this year. You don't, Mark?
I wouldn't. I don't have that money, but I wouldn't make that bet myself.
I don't like it.
When's the last time? And I know Big Ben's been out of the league and coming off a serious injury, but I'd be curious the last time the Steelers won less than 10 games when he was the quarterback. I'm sure he's been there forever.
The last time he was the quarterback.
But didn't he miss?
They missed the playoffs.
Did he really?
Yeah, they won 9 games that year.
Mark, 10K on the Colts winning the AFC South.
No way.
Just wild wagers. He's throwing around.
What are the odds? Well, you got to give you the odds though. What is it?
Plus 130.
For who?
Oh, it's 10K. 10K on the Colts winning the AFC South.
I need that money now. I don't want to wait till January to find out if I won that.
You got to pretend you're Chad Ochocinco. You're one of the
I don't like that
enigmatic, great route runners in NFL history.
Crazy
people
division.
Kind of forget him as a player, but what a fun player.
Yeah, he has his own checkered past, but a great career. $25K.
I'm going with that. I like that.
Okay, $25K on Cowboys winning the NFC East. Plus 110.
I'm not trusting the Cowboys.
No.
I get it because it's basically a 2-team race. It's not crazy. It's not a bad guess, but I don't like it.
And finally, $25K on the Saints winning the NFC South. I like that one. That's pretty good.
Yeah, I'd take that.
It's just a big old parlay of a ton of different things. Why not? I thought that one seems better than some of the other malarkey.
Well, that one though, you're getting much worse odds. I'm sure.
Yeah, plus 100. Let me add this up. How much money he laid down at the Bellagio here? 25K plus 25K is 50. 50 plus 10 is 60. 60 plus 11 is 71. So, this is tough. 71 plus 41, 250. That's 111, 250. 111, 250 plus 25K. Now it's getting really tough. $111,000 and 250 plus 25 is 11, 21, 31, 136, and then plus $156,000 and $156,250.
That Chris Long podcast starting to sound better by the minute.
Can't top that. Can't top that. I had one, but that was too good.
All right. Let me do the math. Anybody want to close the show while I do the math on this?
Sure.
I'm going to check my work here.
All right. What a day. For Dan Hansis, Mark Sessler, Erica Tamposi, Vic Tafur, Eric and Tamposi's gardener, mowing the tennis court. We'll see you Friday.
Hang on. I'm almost done. 11 plus 10 plus 50. Last one. Oh, I missed it by 1,000. It's $157,275. Ouch.